guys, another freaking video. We are doing my March reading wrap-up of all these beautiful books I read in March, or finished in March. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books, and 5 of them are YA fantasy. One of them is a horror book, a horror collection of short horror stories, and one of them is a gothic novel. So yeah, I'm excited, and let's get into them in the order that I read them, shall we? So don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below. Let me know what you thought of these books, if you've read them, and if you want to read them, etc. So the first books I read in the month were, I just have stuff everywhere, Shadow and Bone, Siege and Storm, and Ruin and Rising. So the original 3 Shadow and Bone books in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. So I read these after watching season 1 of the show. So I already had some impressions of the characters before reading them. And I originally was only going to read like book 1 and maybe some of book 2 so that I didn't know what was going to happen in season 2 of the show. But they were just such easy, quick, fun reads that I just gobbled up all 3. So yeah. Book 1 was super fun. It was cool seeing the characters, Alina, Mal. The Darkling, I was shook how much better Mal is in season 1 of the show versus in the books. In book 1, we barely see Mal, and like the 2 times we do see him, he's like fighting with Alina and not being very supportive. So I understand where all the Mal haters come from, because in the books, like, he's not all that, whereas in season 1 of the show, he's like a sweet angel. So they did so good with him in the show. But yeah, he was not that great book 1. The Darkling, I was surprised too, because I heard a lot of people saying that they thought they wanted like more attention from Alina and the Darkling in the show, etc. I read book 1 and I was like, in season 1, mind you, I read book 1 and I was like, he's barely even there. Like, there were like months at a time where she was training where she didn't even see him. So I was like, I was not feeling it. Like, a lot of people said like, oh, if I hadn't read the books, I wouldn't get the push-pull between the Darkling and Alina in season 1. And I disagree, because I watched season 1 before reading the books, and I felt like the tension between them in season 1 was like more than it was in book 1. So, but yeah, it was cute, it was fun, it was a nice time. It set up the world with the Grisha and all of that, pretty cool. I saw like a TikTok reel, whatever, of someone saying like, oh, I wish someone sat down with Alina and just talked about the history of the Grisha at one point in the movie so I could understand like what they are, because I can't understand it, which I thought was funny. But I feel like it was basic enough to understand. I don't know, or maybe that's partly from the show, because the show did a good job with that, I think. So maybe I already kind of had that understanding and was able to picture it going into book 1 because I'd seen it and this on the screen, who knows. But yeah, I thought it was a really fun, just easy read and exciting, since I had read or watched season 1 of the show, so it was really fun. The book is 356 pages and I read it in like a day, which I read all 3 of these in like a day. I know a lot of people also say that Shadow and Bone, the trilogy, is not as good as like the Six of Crows duology or the King of Scars duology, and that they think it's like the weakest writing by Leigh Bardugo. But But I really enjoyed this. Like, it was a really just fun, quick read, and I don't think every book needs to be super, super descriptive, super complex writing, like super whatever. Like, sometimes you just want to read a book in a day and have it be a really quick, easy, fun read, and that's what like all three of these were. So, and I read them while I was on my period, so they gave me some entertainment and some reprieve from the cramps. Okay. Number 2, Siege and Storm. This book, I kind of forget where the books ended and where the next one started, but I'm pretty sure in this book she starts seeing not flashback, she starts like seeing the Darkling. They're now separated, and she starts like seeing him places because of this connection they have. I'm pretty sure that happens in this book, right? Yes, it did happen in this book. So I thought that was really cool, and I was so glad they did do it in the show too. I didn't know like how much that was going to be in the show or whatnot, but they did do it in the show too, which was super cool to see. I was so happy. I practically squealed the first time it happened. They did it a little differently in the show, and I liked the way they did it in the books better, because in the show they made it be because like he had a piece of the stag in his hand and whatever, and none of that was in the books. So the reasoning I liked better in the book. And just how it played out, I liked better in the book, because in the book, like, Alina has a lot of conflict with herself as she's seen the Darkling. Like, she's still like drawn to him and kind of like wants to see him and kind of like wants to have a little with him, whereas in the show she's like, no, I don't want, like, I don't have a connection with the Darkling at all. So I like it better in the books because like her and the Darkling sort of have a push-pull thing. Also, Tolia and Tamar get introduced in this book, and Nikolai gets introduced in this book too. So those are 3 of my faves. Tolia and Tamar, that was one critique I had for the show too. In the books, they're very passionate. Like, they're like Inej. Like, they have a lot of passion and conviction and like respect and reverence for the saints, and they look at Alina the way like Inej looks at her. Like, they look at her as like a saint who's going to bless them, basically. So in the books they have that like strong like conviction and like just like looking up to her in this way, and in the show I kind of felt like they just kind of used them as comedic effect, which I was really disappointed with, because they're badasses. They're so cool. I mean, their fighting was still badass in the show, don't get me wrong, and I did love seeing them in the show. I think that actors who played them did a phenomenal job, but I wanted to see that like passion and conviction they had in book 2, and just in the books in general. Also, Nikolai was cool in the book, and he was cool in the show. Yeah. I don't know if this was in book 2 or book 3, but I love the change they made in the show regarding, I see a comment, regarding how he didn't even have Jenya like stand trial. Like, he just completely dismissed it, so, and stood up for her. So like, he did confront his parents in the book too, but the way he did it in the show just had some extra, and I was just like, oh my gosh, it was so cool. But in the books, in book 2 and 3, he's very like witty, which is wonderful. Love that. He's so fun. And yeah, he pushes all the buttons, and yeah, you get to see it in the show too. So I think the actor who plays him in the show did a really good job as well. But yeah, he's super fun in the books. And then the one other one that I kind of wish we had seen on the screen, I'm like gripping it because I'm like, oh my gosh, love Shadow and Bone the universe so much. But the one other thing that happened in this book that I kind of wish we had gotten to see on the screen was how the Darkling and Nikolai and Tolia and Tamar and Mal and Alina were all on the same ship searching for the sea whip together in this book. And it was just like so good. Like the Darkling like threatens Alina, and then he's like, he basically says he wouldn't have really done it, and she was like, oh, you wouldn't have really done it, and he was like, I didn't say that. And it's just another one of those tension-filled moments in book 2 that we didn't get in the show, because in the show they kind of have Alina just pivot and not really have that pull towards the Darkling anymore after she finds out what he is, which is not the way she's written in the books. And I I definitely wanted to see her still have that pull towards him in the show. So yeah, but yeah, overall book 2 was fun. Yeah, very fun. Yeah, very fun. And then her and the Darkling had this big like face off at the end of the book, I believe. Yes, they did. And yeah, that I was like, and I didn't really care for that, so I didn't mind not having that in the show. But yeah, now book three went more into the like cult storyline aspect of the Shadow and Bone universe, Grishaverse, and books. So I didn't really care for that. I was kind of like, the Apparat is super creepy, so he's like a key point to the storyline kind of too, though. So like, I don't know, but yeah, I really didn't like the whole cultish storyline. But yeah, and yeah, there was this whole underground thing at one point in the book that I really didn't care for. I put this dust jacket on backwards. Wow, I have been doing that sometimes with books. But yeah, and then the ending, I didn't really care for the ending in regards to Alina and Mal. And I cared a whole lot when it came to the Darkling. But yeah, book 3 was very interesting at the end. The whole cult storyline, though, for however long that lasted, I really did not care for. Mal was kind of like having some beef with Nikolai in this book, and then him and Alina were fighting again, and you know, there was that whole thing. Really, it kind of made me feel bad for Mal, but I also was kind of like, I'm not loving them together. I was kind of shipping Nikolai and Alina in this book, honestly. Whoops. But yeah, this is very different than season 2 of the show, which season 2 kind of combined these two books. But yeah, I don't know. Book 3 was probably, I don't know, I was gonna say my least favorite of the 3 just because of like the plots with like the cult storyline, and then searching for the Firebird was just kind of whatever and whatnot. But then the end, there was a whole scene that made me feel all the feels, so I feel like that kind of has to outweigh some of the stuff from the rest of the book. So I don't know, but yeah, all in all, very much enjoyed reading all 3 of them. They did keep me busy that weekend when I needed it. And yeah, they gave me the ability to analyze season 2 of the show, like those people who are like, actually in the books. Yes, I was that annoying person. Whoopsies. Love that for us who have read the books. But yeah, reading the trilogy was super fun. And actually, I've started King of Scars, and I'm a little more than halfway through it, or maybe I'm more like 3/4 done with it now, I don't know. But I'm really having trouble getting through it ever since the halfway mark, because like there's just too many POVs and too many people at different locations, and I'm just not feeling it anymore. And also, I started Six of Crows a while back and put it down halfway through too, because it was just going by like too slowly. And I could not picture, with all the planning, like halfway through the book, they hadn't even gone to the, you know, wherever they were going for the heist yet. Like they were still in the planning stage. And I was like, this is too slow moving of pace for me. So yeah, I don't know. I think the Shadow and Bone trilogy might be my favorite out of her books thus far. I don't know, I haven't finished the other ones, so I can't say, but they were definitely easier to get through and easier for me to get into. But that could also be because I watched season 1 of the show first. But yeah, I really like those books. Maybe that means I like easy writing and not too, you know, complex, whatever writing. I don't know, I don't care. I thought they were fun. So yeah. Next in the month, I finished Man-Made Monsters by Andrea L. Rogers. This was Janet Gatton's book pick of the month for last month on YouTube, so I read it for that. And it is a collection of short horror stories, and it's by a Cherokee author. And this book, I thought the writing was so well done. It touched on some really mature topics while also giving that like mythological, like vampires, werewolves, zombies, etc. lens, and it was just so good. There's some like illustrations for the start of each short story. It touched on shooting drills and like how normalized that's become for students, and sort of like the trauma that comes with that. It touched on, in the zombie short story, it touched on like a pandemic and like people making fun of people for wanting to stay safe during that, and just how something can spread so quickly. In the story, it was a zombie apocalypse, but like the parallel was there. And like their neighbors were making fun of them for wanting to stay in the house in the beginning when the zombie apocalypse broke out. And yeah, so the parallels were very apparent. It touched on abduction of girls going missing and how minority people who go missing are not searched for the same way as white individuals are searched for when they go missing. Like, it touched on so many real world horrors while also having like zombies, vampires, etc. characters. So yeah, it was written so well done. I did feel a little depressed when reading some of the stories, like the Deer Woman's story, which had to do with abduction and the shooting drills, and the zombie story. I really liked the alien story, and I really liked Amma, who was turned into a vampire, like in the very beginning, the very first story. And so the stories were kind of connected too, because they were all a part of the same family tree, so you get to see just how much happens to their family over the course of generations. And it was just very interesting. Yeah, just very interesting. Definitely recommend, because the writing was so good, and yeah, it touched on a lot of real world topics while also giving that mystical creature aspect and having it be from a minority audience group for once, because whenever we see these vampire stories, etc., it's always from a white audience, and half the time the authors make the white vampires of the age have like fought in like the Confederate Army or something. Like, I don't know what's up with that. Why, if all the authors who write these characters are like closeted racists or what? Like, I don't know why they always make their vampire characters have fought in the Confederacy. But it was just cool to see the vampires written from a minority perspective and being minorities for once. So it was like these vampires were turned because of like colonial people who were going after their people, while their people were also being gone after by normal colonizers. So it was just very interesting to see like vampires from the lens of like a marginalized group, and not just like some frilly people in petticoats who decided to suck blood one day, like they're usually written in mainstream vampire stories. So I don't know, it was very different. In several of my vlogs that I posted, I talked about some of the short stories in this book, because I did find many of them to be very impactful. But yeah, usually I don't read horror, but I really would recommend this book. So yeah. Next in the month, I reread Red Queen, and this was amazing. This might go down in history as my favorite YA fantasy of all time. Like, I don't know what is ever going to top this book, but there's a lot of great books out there, so we'll see. But yeah, Red Queen, I picked it up because I was kind of in a slump, not really feeling like reading anything else. I picked this up and I'm so glad I did. Like, I was squealing, I underlined so much, I hearted so much. Like, I just love this book so freaking much. I love this series so freaking much. All the characters in this book is so good. The societal parallels hit different. Like, people talk about the Hunger Games, but like this right here was something else. Like, it's a fantasy book, but it also has like those dystopian themes too. Basically, it's a society that's separated by people who have red blood and people who have silver blood, and people with silver blood have superpowers. They can be strong arms, they can meld metal, they can call fire, they can do this, they can do that. And then people with red blood are commoners and don't have superpowers. And so we meet our main character, Mare, who, surprise, has red blood, but also has like superpowers. So yeah, the societal themes are just so good about like the ruling class, the silvers, versus the like working class, the reds, who are like being oppressed by the silvers, and yeah, like executed if they're disrespectful to the silvers, forced to watch like these processions where the silvers go by or else they get beaten. And it's just like very like a terrible, like grim, bleak society where these red people are being, not red people, but people with red blood are being persecuted, even though they outnumber the silvers. But the silvers have these superpowers and they're seen as like gods, basically. So the societal parallels are off the charts and just written so well. The main character isn't one of those like perfect characters who's like, oh, I just want to sacrifice myself for everyone else. Like, no, she's self-preserving. She, you know, has grown up having to do what she needs to do to survive and have her family survive. So she keeps that like street smarts with her, which I love. She's feisty, she's angsty, she has a lot of spirit, she has a lot of just like, and she has a lot of anger towards the people who oppressed her, and she's just like a realistic badass character. So love that. And there's also a love triangle, love square really in this book, because there's Mare, there's Killorn, who is her childhood best friend, who her younger sister has a crush on, who has a crush on her. And then there's two princes, the older prince Cal and the younger prince Mavin. And they, of course, both have fought about everything their entire lives, have been in competition about everything their entire lives. So of course they also have to be in competition about the girl. And yeah, I like never see a love triangle, I feel like, where both characters are written well. No less 3 different love interests for the same girl, all being written well, but all 3 of them, Killorn, Cal, and Mavin, are written very well and have a lot of complexity to them, which is not something you see a lot. So yeah, this book is just amazing. I ate it up in a day with the physical copy, and I also like was annotating it, which, you know, that takes some time. So the fact that I still ate it up in a day is like, wow. But I adore this book and this series. I'm almost finished with the last book now, and I'm kind of scared because I don't remember what happens in the last book except like one thing. So I'm like scared at this point because I've refound this love and adoration for these characters, and now I'm terrified because I don't remember like what happens in the last book. I will say the last book is a lot slower though, and yeah, the last book, different parts of the books, like there's more like war stuff, and that's another thing the author does really in-depth battle scenes. So the other books in the series I listened to on audio while also following along with my books. I didn't just go off of the physical copy because it's really hard for me to like keep up with the battle scenes just reading it. But the audio helps, at least for a series like this. So I also read Glass Sword, which is book 2 in the series. This was actually the last book I read in the month, but we'll just talk about it now since it goes with Red Queen. But so this one, the first like half, it kind of was hard for me to get into, maybe like the first third, but then I started the audiobook for it, and then that helped like that. Then all of a sudden I could get through it super quick once I had the audiobook. So what I would do then was I would listen to the audiobook, and then whenever there were parts where I was like, oh my gosh, I took out my pen and like marked up my physical copy for those parts. And I found that to work out really well. But yeah, in the first like half of this book, Mare and some characters are like searching for some people that we won't get into because of spoilers, but they're like searching for some people. So that part of the book I always don't really care for that much, but like it is integral to the storyline. So yeah, but there's just other aspects of the story that like I want to get to so bad that it makes it hard for me to get through that part. But yeah, there's also a cool thing with notes in this story, in this book, where like Mavin writes Mare notes, and it's like insane the way he does it. So I was squealing about those. And Cal and Mavin really have more like competition in this book. Killorn gets a little whiny in this book, but then you start really feeling bad for him at the same time. And then towards the end, there's something that happens that's really terrible in regards to Mare. And she's like so distressed, and like everyone takes this moment when she's in this huge amount of distress to like harp on her, like Cal and a bunch of other people. And Killorn's the only one who's there at the time who just like is supportive of her. So then I started really loving Killorn at that point, because I was like, he's the only one who was with her at that location who was like just like there for her at that point. So that made me start to really like Killorn, which was nice because I'm not usually like woohoo hometown hero. Like I usually like the other characters, love interests, which I love Mavin more, honestly, just as a character. I don't even know as like a love interest, but just as like a complex character. But yeah, I really started to like Killorn in this book because he was just so sweet, and just, yeah, he was just a super supportive character, and I really appreciated his relationship with everyone. So yeah, also the covers of all these books are stunning. Like the first book, you see the red dripping down, and red only because reds are being persecuted. And then in every book after that, you see red and silver blood dripping down, because as they're like fighting back and having just all this conflict coming to a head, it's like both peoples are like bleeding. So yeah, stunning covers, stunning books. And since then, I have also read King's Cage again, which is the third book in the series. But I read that in April, so we'll get to that in my April reading wrap-up video. And I'm gonna finish War Storm very soon, so we'll also get to that in April. And then lastly, out of our books, we have Tripping Arcadia. This is a gothic novel and was and was another book club book pick of the month. That was a really weird way of saying that, again, for Janet Gadden's channel. So I just participated in the live show for this like a couple days ago, and I find her live shows to be super entertaining. But yeah, so I read this for that, and this convinced me I need to read more gothic novels. The writing in the beginning of the book was so stunning. There were so many quotes that I underlined. In the second half of the book, I found the main character to be a rather just very much less likable and start to be kind of like the rich people that she hated in the beginning. But yeah, basically the main character has strained family relationships, and she was working with her aunt in Europe for a little bit. Then her parents called her home because her dad lost her job. So she gets a job to help with them. It ends up being for this rich family who's actually the reason her dad lost his job. And so then she decides she's out for blood, gonna get revenge on them. But she also has a crush on the daughter of this family who's responsible for this. And she's also tasked with taking care of the son of this family who has some like mysterious, like something wrong with him, and takes these mysterious pills. And yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, but there are so many stunning quotes in the beginning of this book. Like on page 1, it says, months of my life can now be boiled down into these simple impressions, blah, blah, blah. Each of them accurate, but each of them simple, dreamlike things, far prettier and far more poetic than the full reality. If that's not what the mind is good for, to repaint and repossess every small horror of our lives, then perhaps it's the heart's doing. And then later, page 2, it says, there's not an ounce of marrow remaining in my bones, absent of the details. Later on page 2, it says, but if there's to be any starting point for all this, then it was there. My heels covered in pollen, a gentle breeze in the curls of my hair, and the New England sun beating down on my face in a way that felt familiar and yet oddly foreign. So yeah, there was just a lot of beautiful like lyrical writing in the beginning, which I adored and underlined a bunch of. Towards the end, I think a lot of the like big reveals of like the mystery aspects of the gothicness of the novel, a lot of the reveals kind of didn't really make all the sense in the world, and there was a lot of loose ends, so I was kind of like about that in the second half of the book and towards the end. But I think the writing was really good and I really enjoyed the book. I did read it in like a few days, so yeah, and it convinced me I need to read more gothic novels. So, but I have to be in a mood for something like dark and whatever to read a gothic novel. But yeah, so that's all 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books that I read in March. I honestly enjoyed all of them a lot. Like every single book that I finished in March, I really enjoyed. So that's pretty good. That's a good reading month, I think. No matter how many books you've read, if you enjoyed them, then that's a good reading month. So yeah, I had a lot of fun in March with my books. And yeah, I hope you all could enjoy this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Happy holidays, happy Easter if you celebrate, or the other holidays. I believe there's some other holidays going on right now, but I'm not sure of the days and names for all of them. But I hope you're all enjoying, if you're having a holiday from work or anything like that, or celebrating something with families or observing something religious. I hope you're all having a good time and staying safe and well. And yeah, hope to see you in my next video.